Okay, we are recording, Dr. Revis.
Yeah, we're getting some information in the chat box that you have gone to your calendar in your course shell, and this link is in your course shell, and you should be in Crawford Hamilton's class. Don't go to the calendar, go into your, where would it be, Dr. Stedman?
Okay,
Um,
Dr. Crawford was just with us, so he clicked in on that as well. That was
yeah,
supposed to have been changed out. So I thought there were people in here I didn't recognize names. That's why I kept looking. But
all right.
but anyway, if you are in Dr. Crawford and Dr. Hamilton's class, then you need to sign out and then go back in and sign in. You're with the wrong link. We'd love to have you, but we can't. Just give them time to get out, Dr. Revis. That's
Okay.
why I kept looking. I said, where are all these people coming from? And I knew they weren't on my list, and I didn't had not recognized them from your list. Um, Dr. Revis, give me 1 second. I'm going to call Dr. Hamilton and tell her what's going on so they can get it worked out because I don't have access to that link and they can tell me what to do.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and welcome you to week 3. And I hope you've had a good week. I know it was a busy week and a busy Sunday evening, getting your first task in on time. The first thing I want to do is just a few comments about from my class, those tasks that were submitted. First of all, your content was strong, and I do appreciate that. Some of you still had some small things in your profile. I like to see a breakdown of your student demographics, of your proficiency state test scores, and your growth scores. I like to see a breakdown of your teachers and faculty and staff, that kind of thing. So I did make some notes on some of those. The other thing that I found was some APA errors, and I'm going to go over some of those here in a moment, some of the most common errors that I found. But overall, I felt really good about task 1 that you turned in. Now, this week gets a little crazier. So remember your routine. You need to try to have your PLC meeting on Wednesday, no later than Thursday. Then that gives you time to write up your narrative to turn in by 6 p.m. on Sunday evening. If you miss that deadline, it's late. 6 p.m. Sunday evening. And then as soon as you turn that in, turn around and start working on your peer reviews. Now, if you turn your task 1 in late, 10 points comes off that automatically, and you do not regain those 10 points. If it's incomplete, I give minus another 10 points. Some instructors give a 0 for incomplete. I will give you another minus 10 points, depending on how incomplete it is. If you're just missing one section's not fully developed, I may give you minus 10 points, but you can never recover that. So just keep that in mind. The timelines and due dates are very, very important. If you miss your peer review at 6 p.m. on Tuesdays, it's a 0, automatic 0. There is no recovery for that. So just be careful on your timelines. Dr. Stedman, you want to add anything to that?
I do, and uh, first of all, my work was for the AAPSL Task 1. was, I mean, I had a lot of just, I had some superior work, and I have some work that is a work in progress, but none of it was, I don't think that if you go back and you look at what we've provided you with, you've got to use, you the template is a necessity, and I'm going to go over that again this evening. It's a necessity. You have to use the template as it is. The helpful hints, if you're not using your helpful hints, you're you're gonna be off base. The helpful hints guides you 100% of the way with what you should do, and follow it. Fill in the blanks as you go along, and just do that. And the example that we've given you, um, while it may not be the best narrative content in the world, it shows you exactly how things are to be done. If you're having problems with APA, go in there and look at how APA was done. Also, remember, you have access to your peers' work once it goes in. And I had I had four students, uh, Dr. Evans, that had submitted theirs early, and so I grade, I do a quick turnaround on my grading, for the most part. And so that work was in there. You cannot copy a student's work, but you can model a student's work. You can go back in and look, it's there on purpose. So if you've got a question about something, if I'm looking at Danielle and Stuart, if Danielle has a question about something, and Stuart's already turned his paper in, there's absolutely nothing wrong with Danielle looking, say, well, I'm going to go see in discussion how Stuart has, what he's done there. You learn from each other. It's a learning process. And it's like Dr. Revis said, cannot, you cannot, I don't care, you cannot get behind, the, the, the fact that you said, well, we had this to do at work this week, or this happened. I'm sorry, this is this is this is your work too. And we cannot excuse that. And when work is not submitted on schedule, um, the system automatically, it goes to a zero already. And then we operate from that point, but the system automatically will put a zero in there if your work's not in there on schedule. And I mean, not just any work, because you can get it in there. And if it's just anything, we still have to deal with the fact that your work is, like Dr. Riff said, not complete, or not quality, whatever. And we realize this is the first time. It's a learning curve. We realize that, I'm very optimistic. This time it should be so much differently, because you're learning the process, and you're learning our expectations. So if you lost points this time, then you can regain those points by not letting it happen again. And when you turn in your AAPSL task one for the final not peer review, but for instructor review, then Dr. Revis and I'm going to just say, if you made a 25 on it for me, that doesn't mean that that 25 stays there. I hope that your work is quality work, and that, and because it was a review, that doesn't mean, if all of your work if it was not negligence on your part and you just left stuff out and didn't do it, that means that you possibly could get a 50 when you resubmit your work. Now, if you submitted work that was not complete because you didn't do things or whatever, then we still have to deduct points from that. But the fact that you didn't get a 50, all the points the first time, does not mean that you cannot get the points the second time uh, with your evidence work when you submit the task. So when you go back and do that review, it doesn't go to your peers the second time. It goes back into the same place for Dr. Revis and me. And we have the option of taking it, back up to the full point capacity if you've done the work.
Something went wrong. Please try again.
That's Siri talking to me. Hush, Siri. That is so weird. But anyway,
and then you have to submit it. Once you submit it to us to review again, we will tell you that you are ready to submit to the final Dropbox. And so you have a chance to get a 50 on the review and a 50 on, does they get a 50 or 100 points, Dr.
100
on the
points
final?
On the final.
Okay.
And I had one to Savannah submitted hers. Savannah's through with task one. I've cleared her completely on task one, and she got her full points today, and I told her to move on. And I've got some others that are at that point too. All they've got to do is clean up a little bit, get it to me, get it out of the way, and so that you don't have to think about task one anymore. Again, those of you that are having to clean up, remember you cannot do task two without task one being cleared. So it's when we finish tonight, you really need to focus on getting task one finished and to us by tonight or by tomorrow at some point. And notice, I put it in green right here. We must have it no later than 9:13, but don't wait till 9:13. That is really pushing it for you. That's pushing it for you because you've got to meet again with your PLC this week. You've got to meet with that team again this week for task two. And this is why I pulled this up. I want you to see this. Now notice it talks about we're in week 3. I want you to look at week 3 responsibilities. Well, come on. Here we go. This is what you have to do this week. Okay, we have returned for everybody that submitted AAPSL Task 1. You've gotten a score on it where we have reviewed it. We've given you feedback on it. You're responsible for revising that and making sure, use that checklist. You need to go back and check APA, like Dr. Revis said, check for grammar, punctuation, grammar, spelling. Make sure that it's all right. I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to pick on you, Stuart. If Stuart submits his work back to me and I have told him to do something, and he didn't, I've got to send it back to him. However, Stuart don't get any more chances to bring his grade up, but he still has to have it right before it can move on. You understand what I'm saying? So you get that one chance. So do it right, as right as you can the first time. But you've got to, by Sunday at the latest, and it shouldn't be Sunday, you should already have this in early this week. Task 1 needs to be, we'll clear it, and then you can go ahead and submit it for a final grade, because we'll tell you that once it's cleared, we'll say submit to for grade and move on to the next one. And the peer reviews, Dr. Revis, I know you spoke about that, but think about this. The peer reviews has a dual purpose. Again, it's to help you and it's to help your peers. Again, I'm picking on Stuart again. Stuart made a comment to one of the persons that peer reviewed his work, how helpful it was for them and the process, how the peer review he did for his person, how much it helped him understand better what he was doing. That's lesson learned. That's what you're supposed to do. But if a peer review comes in after 5 o'clock today, guess what? It's no good. It's not going to do Nicole any good. If 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 she doesn't get the peer review that she needs, in a timely manner. Again, we're not going to hold you hostage either. You let us know. But if there's people on your peer review team and they don't submit their work on time, you don't wait on them. You go find you somebody else's work and you peer review. They just won't get they won't get peer reviews that they need. So do not be held hostage. Let us know, but you move on and you find you somebody to work with. And Dr. Revis, with that in mind, can you go back one more time? I'm going to stop share. Can you go back one more time and just review very quickly for anybody that was having a concern about that peer review process? Because you've got to put it in two different places.
All right. You've got to put it in two different. And Dr. Stedman, you've asked me to do something I don't feel comfortable doing, but I will try.
Oh,
as far
okay.
as the drop boxes.
Okay, I thought you were okay.
I was going to talk about
Okay, just go to discussion while you're there. Go to discussion.
okay, go discussion.
Okay, and go down. Okay, AAPSL Task 1 peer review. Okay, you know that this is where your first one goes. That's what you're gonna drop it under discussion, or you're gonna drop all of them under discussion. And this is where you go find the work you're going to attach your work there, and this is going to give a chance for somebody else to look at your work and to go back and put their reviews back in there. So this is the first place. This is for your peers, and it's not for grade. Come back out of that, Dr. Revis.
Go to grade book.
And go to come back down and go to content. Just go to content.
Okay.
And then scroll down. Now you can find this also in your calendar. Go on down. You're going to find for grade.
This just keeps going, doesn't it?
Okay, it does. Okay. Okay, going down. Okay, assignments right there.
All right, here we go.
Assignments for grade. Now go to AAPSL. You've got two places. AAPSL Task 1 peer review number 1. This is where, if you're in my class, this is those same two that you submitted for discussion. You're going to take the first one that you do, and you're going to put it here for grade for me, or for Dr. Revis, and then you're going to put it, and then you're going to come out, and then you're going to do the same thing from your second one. So this is where it goes for grade, and then for your peers, it goes under discussion. Does everybody understand that process now? There was a little question about it.
And to resubmit your revisions to Dr. Stedman and I for task 1, you do it here.
Right.
Right here.
That's right. You go back and you resubmit it. You resubmit it back to the same place, and that is for the second review.
And Dr. Stone, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Keisha McCoy Wilson.
Keisha.
Hi, I thank you all for providing this information in such a very thorough fashion. However, I may have missed something at the very beginning, and I please forgive my asking you all to be redundant. If you would, though, however, could you go back and just take us back one more time?
Keisha,
and then
did you get my email?
I did.
Okay, let's do this. Wait until after class tonight, or either first. How early can you Zoom with me in the morning?
Around 9 o'clock.
Okay, let's schedule for you to Zoom with me in the morning. I'll send you a link, and let me go over this with you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Let's do that. Okay, I'll meet with you in the morning. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Hey,
And
Dr.
somebody
Revis?
asked about the template. Remember that there's your template that you write in. And if you don't really understand how to do it, here's the example. It needs to be very thorough. I've only looked at about two students,
Mhm.
and they were outstanding, Dr. Stedman.
Mine were too.
Outstanding.
Mine were too.
So I'm gonna grade and score the rest of the peer reviews after class tonight.
Okay. But I think we can move on from that, Dr. Revis. And then, and if just like Keisha reached out, if you have a problem, reach out to either Dr. Revis or to me, and we'll do what we need to do to help you individually if you're still if there's something that's not quite clear with some of this. Okay. And it's okay to ask. There's nothing wrong with that. We'd rather you ask now. Dr. Revis, I'm going to
You want me to
let
quickly
me
do?
ask, let's just ask. Let's just ask. The work that you're doing with task one, the editing work that you're doing with task one, does everybody understand what you're remember task one? Remember, there's three things you've got to do. The first thing you've got to do the PLC research, and we gave you we in your helpful hints. We told you the things to to specifically look at. Don't get away from that. You know, address those questions, and remember, you've got to have three references. One of them has to be to four, a minimum of three. One has to be to four, and all of it has to be done APA. Everybody understand that? Secondly, remember your PLC team. You've got to form your PLC team, and remember, we asked that you identify who they are, or a person that tell who they are, why you picked them, and talk about their credentials. Why do you think they're important to the team? Thirdly, you had to have a short meeting with them. And I say a short meeting, 20 minutes, 30 minutes at the most. And all you're doing this first meeting, if you haven't done that, is you had to meet with them and you had to talk to them about thank them for serving on your PLC, asking them, letting them know what they would be doing, the whole purpose behind it, and establishing norms for the PLC. Talk about when you're going to meet again. But at the first one, remember, you're not even talking about anything as far as trying to identify a problem in the school. That's not time yet. And each time you submit, only submit for that particular task. Task one, you submitted this time. Next time, you're going to submit task two, but I don't want to see task one, and I don't want to see the template for task 3 and 4 and 5. I only want to see task two when you submit this week. Okay? It gets cumbersome when you'll compile it. Now you may have it saved somewhere else so that it's a running document for you, but we only want to see one task at a time at this point. Remember, you will always have an appendices, the heading, reference section that comes next, and the references are ABC order, APA style. And then you will always have an appendices. The heading is appendices, and then underneath that is appendix, the first appendix. Appendix A, Appendix B. And then remember, you had to put in there as an artifact, as an appendix, you had to put in there the information requesting your PLC and the affirmative response back from your principal that you could do it. Just putting a disclaimer up there that they gave you permission is not enough. You've got to show that they gave you permission. It's an artifact. You always have an agenda. The agenda guides your meeting, and then we highly suggested that you put some notes in there about your meeting as another appendix, and then appendix, and then, you know, every now and then take a picture of you presenting. So that's proof that you're doing. But that's how you get through task one. And your remember your school profile was in this one as well. Now, after this, the school profile, you won't have to put that in with the rest of them. You only put it in with your task one. Are there questions about task one? Do you know how to finish it for us? Anybody?
Thank you. I think I understand it better now. Thank you.
Yeah. Good, Keisha. And we'll go over it again in the morning too, okay? So with that in mind, Dr. Revis, I'm going to go into task two, but I want you to if you would, to do what you need with the Dover Library and APA review before I do that.
Okay. What I want to do is just share with you very briefly a document that contains some errors, and these were the most common errors. So if you can look at my screen, I want you to read the first sentence. We're just going to go sentence by sentence. And I'm going to ask, I want to call on some of you to identify some errors in that first sentence. Now we're looking at APA. Okay, Julia Freeman, do you see an error in APA in that first sentence? Can't hear you for some reason.
What about now?
Oh, yeah, we've got you now.
Okay. You asked me first of all people. Okay. So I don't know. So it looks like they gave the name of who wrote it and the date. So that looks correct.
They put it here and here.
Yes. I don't know if that's correct. That's the one thing I was questioning. So if you have it in both places.
Casey Dover, tell me what we need to do here.
I was on the same track with the double citation of the author.
Yeah,
you
you
either
don't need it
to,
both places.
No, you just need one or the other.
Yeah, one or the other. Now, this is called a narrative citation, narrative in-text citation, because it's in your narrative. But you never put in the author's first name. Remember that. Okay. But once you state that author's name, it always goes, always, author, parentheses, date. And that goes with a narrative or a parenthetical. But if you've got it here, you don't need it here. So I saw that a couple times. And of course, that's called over-citation. All right, let's look at this one. Does anybody see any errors here in this? Well, it's a very long sentence, so let me keep going. I can't get it to stay out without.
Okay.
Sam Patterson, do you see one error? You're muted, Sam.
To me, it looks like with the direct quote, the citation needs to come after the direct quote rather than because it's not a summary, because that would be more like a summary of what they said versus a direct quote if you put the last name and date prior to the direct quote.
Okay, I was in error. It's just this sentence right here is all we're looking at.
Okay.
It's a direct quote. What do you need with a direct quote, friends? What must you have? Anybody call out.
Page number.
Page number. Page number. You can put that page number right here, comma, or you could put it down here at the end of the sentence, but you wouldn't put it both places. If you want to put it at the end of the sentence, then there's a couple things wrong, regardless of whether this quotation mark needs to go here. All right. The quotation mark needs to go right here. And your period would be after the, if you put it here, if you put your page number up in the narrative citation, it should go like that.
Okay, Julia and Kayla raised their hands, Dr. Revis.
Okay. Questions?
Well, I actually had raised my hand for, you highlighted more than just that. So I was going to talk about the next thing I saw, but I can wait.
Okay. All right. So direct quotes must have a page number. All right. Let's look at the last sentence very quickly. There are two things here that are in error. Somebody raise your hand. Dr. Stedman, call on one of those raised hands,
Kayla,
please.
Kayla, what do you see wrong?
Oh, I just had a question.
Okay, what do you see wrong with that?
The author's names.
Okay, what about it?
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
Or
It's
after
got-
the math teacher, English product
I
question.
can help. Can I help her out?
Yes.
Please.
Sure, please.
Okay,
Yes.
so you don't need to list all of those authors' names. There it's like et all or something. I don't know how you would say that, but I think that's it. Yeah.
It's at all.
Yes.
And remember, that's Latin for and others. Okay, so only if you have 3 or more authors, you use the at all. And there's something else wrong. And a lot of you missed this. I'll go ahead and tell you. You always refer in your narrative to your appendix entries, always. But you refer to it like this. You put in the lowercase, see appendix 3. That's a minor thing, but you'll use that a lot throughout the program. Guys, there are patterns to APA. You got to learn them. Okay.
Dr. Revis, I'm going to ask this question, and this is for me because I have to go back and look at this stuff over and over again because I get confused myself sometimes. Does the period come after the parentheses or does it come after the word profession? Because I see it both ways.
You're talking about in this sentence right here?
Yeah, where you said see appendix 3.
Oh, it always goes at the
It
end.
goes at the end. Okay.
At the end.
That
That is finishing your
I
sentence.
just wanted to make sure because I had to point that out in some work as well. Okay.
Just like, your quote, your end quote goes before the end of the period.
Okay.
All right. The other thing that I saw some errors were in your references. What's in your references? All double spaced. That was good. Most of you got that, and most of you got the hanging indent. But it was obvious that some of you were using some of those reference builders because it had a lot of errors in capitalization. I know from looking at this particular entry, I know this is a journal. The title of a journal is not in italics, but the only words that should be capitalized is the first word in the title of the article and the first word after a colon or semicolon. And I saw that over and over, everything will be capitalized. Also, I know it's a journal because it says a journal, but if the title of the journal was just Applied Psychology, it would be in italics. Okay. And if you have a DOI, you would put that in as well. An authored book, again, the title of a book or the title of a journal is always in italics. And again, capitalization errors. It doesn't seem like you would put the title of a book in lowercase, but you do. So the first word in the title, the first word after the conjunction, or proper nouns. Frameworks of power in the United States, that would be capitalized because that is the proper noun that we capitalize. And then this is the publisher. Of course, it has to be hanging indent. Questions on references?
And Dr. Revis is so right. The only way you're going to do, you're going to have to just learn it. And I mean, there's not that many steps to understanding the APA for what you have to do for this program, for the writing for this program. But you've got to learn it and you've got to practice it. Okay, Stuart and then Savannah.
Yes, I was wondering if the web source itself should be hyperlinked or left in black. It seemed APA seems to be kind of one or the other on that, and I was asking your preference.
Typically it's hyperlinked, but it's not a big deal for us because we're not going to go to that source, but it should be hyperlinked.
Thank you.
Okay, Savannah.
I actually had the same question because Stuart and I
Okay.
talked about that this week, so that's perfect.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Great. Okay.
And guys, don't ask me how to do APA because sometimes I have to look it up. And I work in the doctoral program where I should know it. I should know it. But I don't know everything about it. I have to look a lot of things up. You're going to have to learn to do that as well. Now, the other thing that was on the agenda is about a search in Dover Library. Is everybody okay with how to do a search in Dover Library? And there's a short video that we have posted in the course shell. I thought you guys did great, my class, because you had, Dr. Stedman, most of my students had many more than 3 references in that research section.
Mine did too. I put that.
So it was
put
obvious
that on the agenda, Dr. Revis, just to make sure that everybody was clear on it. And then remember,
Yes.
you've got last week's recorded video under Module 2 that you can always go back and you can fast forward to the section where this is being explained again. So, you can always go back and use those as references. Okay. Okay. I think we're good, Dr. Revis, on that. So if you'll,
Okay,
you've
turn
stopped
it back
sharing.
to you then.
Okay, let me, I'm going to share. Now, I need you to give me your undivided attention. I'm going to go to, we'll go to the helpful hints. And remember, just as a quick review again, we said that if anything in your template is in black, what do you do with it? Anybody?
Leave it there.
You keep
Leave
it.
it there. If it's highlighted in yellow, what do you do?
Add something.
That's you got as a narrative. And then if it's in red, what is the red in there for?
Notes to us that we should delete.
Right. And remember, you take the yellow highlighting out and you take all the red out once you do what you do. We shouldn't see any yellow or any red in what you submit to us, for review. Again, this document is valuable. Let's go on to the task 2, and many of you may have already started on this. I would hope so. Give me a second. Here we are. Okay. And task 2, prompt 1, it's going to have 2 prompts to it. Your heading is going to be data collection strategies. With this, you will work with your selected PLC team formed in task 1 to determine the strategies that will be used to collect the data, to determine the most pressing need for improving student achievement. But remember, this is all about student achievement. The narrative work for this section will discuss those strategies. And again, we've given you a blurb of an example of what to do. When I first asked for permission to form my PLC, my principal suggested the team I formed look at the 8th grade math data. Now, the principal already has a preconceived idea, but that, that math is the problem. That may be right, but guess what? It may not be right once you look at it. But if that's what your principal wants you to do, then you put a focus on there, but you don't just put the only focus there. You look at the reading, you look at other things as well, because when you go back and present to your principal, you want to say, we did exactly what you asked us to do. We looked at the math, but we looked at this too, and this is what we found. You take the lead on that and you say, this is what we found. But this is what you're going to do in this section. You're going to talk about all of the strategies, and notice it says more than one. So that means that there should be multiple strategies there, not just one or two. There should be multiple strategies there as you are looking at, this is what we're going to do. This is our plan. You're strategically planning now. This is what we're going to do. We know there's a problem. So we're going to strategically do these things to help with that problem or identify that problem. The next heading is the criteria and process for identifying the most pressing need. You still don't know what it is. You might think you do, but you still don't know what it is. Once the team and you have determined those strategies for collecting the data, then you will decide what criteria and process will be used for identifying the most pressing need. Okay, in number one, you've determined these are the strategies for collecting the data. Now you're going to decide what process are we going to use using all of these strategies? What process are we going to use to decide what the most pressing need is? And you're going to talk about that in that section there. And again, this is an example. I'm not going to read all of that. I don't need to. And then finally, after you've done step 1 and step 2, you can't go past go. You can't collect $200. You got to do 1 and 2 before you can do 3. Your heading is collaborative data analysis. And look at that word, collaborative. Does that mean that Danielle does it all by herself? No. Kim, you can't do it all by yourself. That means you got to work with your team. Once steps 1 and 2 have been completed, the team and you will take a detailed look of all data that has been gathered. You should thoroughly, it's like having all the puzzle pieces out on the table. You should thoroughly disaggregate the data by looking at all groups, subgroups, etc. That means anything else. Make sure you cover every angle possible. And the good thing about it is, if Danielle and Savannah and Kim are on a team, that means that Danielle's looking at one thing, but she may not have seen something that Savannah sees. And Savannah's going to bring out something that Danielle had not thought about as the leader of the PLC. And the same thing with Kim. Kim's going to do the same thing. Kim, each of you will see some things maybe a little bit differently, or you'll see some things that the others have not seen, but you put it all out on the table, you talk about it, and that's how you collaborate to come to a decision. And then after you've done all of that, it's like the jury coming together, and they're going to make a verdict. Your heading is most pressing need. Once step 3 has been completed, the team and you will determine the most pressing need based on the disaggregation of the data. And you're going to talk about that. The narrative work for this section will identify the most pressing need and why. And really, you know, I like to see Dr. Revis, that first sentence, the team and after much discussion and disaggregation of data, the team and the team under my leadership determined that blank, blank, blank was the most pressing need. And then you tell why you came to that decision. And that you're just put it in writing form. So notice everything that I've talked about in prompt 1 is narrative work. There's 4 things that you've got to do. 3 things you got to do before you get to the most pressing need. All of it is narrative work. No figures, no chart, nothing up there. It's just narrative work. But then, Dr. Revis, we get to task 2. It's going to be different. Dr. Revis, what did they do in task 2?
So in task 2 is where you place all of your figures, and you should be able to go to your school report card. Hopefully that's accessible to you now. I know your test score data is accessible from North Carolina. I don't know if it's put in the school report card format yet, but that's where you graphically represent the data that you guys examined. Now you can reference it up there in prompt 1 in your narrative work, but here is where you place the figures. Now don't just place an arbitrary figure. Of course you need to know how to format figures. Go back and make sure you're formatting those figures correctly. And I always like the sandwich effect. You introduce a figure, put the figure in, and then you briefly interpret the figure. Or what did you guys find? What did your team find? As seen from figure 1, our scores for our ESL population or EL population is a huge gap between those scores and our other students. You know, whatever you're doing, you introduce it, put it in, and then summarize what your team gleaned from this figure. What do you want the reader to note in that figure? Okay.
And Dr. Evans,
And
just remember, before that, you always, you know, a good writer, you always have transition sentences, a transition narrative. It doesn't need to be long, but as you're transitioning into task 2, you need to open up with some type of transition as you're leading into the graphic representations of things.
right. And again, you can't just put figures out there. You've got to put some text with it. Introduce it, and then describe describe what your team ascertained from the data that you're presenting there in that figure.
And when I look at task 2, prompt 2, I should be able to clearly see why you decided the most pressing need was what it is in prompt 1. I should be able to see it there because you're showing this is the proof right here. You're visually showing me what you've talked about in prompt 1, and then following that, remember references. If you have, you know, this is where you may not have a reference sometimes, but if there are references, you have to put your reference section in. And then remember, you're always going to have that appendices because you're meeting with your team. So, you know, this is where you would have, at a minimum, you would have an agenda and you would have minutes of your meeting at a minimum, you know, there. So that is, let me stop share. That is prompt 2 that is due this coming Sunday. You have to meet with your team this week. You've got to disaggregate this data. You've got to go ahead, and this week you're going to determine what the most pressing need is at your school, because things are going to change after this week. And before we leave, I'm not going to, not to complicate things, I'm going to go ahead and show you task 3, because you need to understand how it all goes together. You won't be working on task 3. 99% of you won't. But you need to understand what the next step is going to be while you're doing task 2. So you get task 1 finished and get it finished quickly so that you can get task 2 done, because remember, Friday's going to get here before you know it, and you've got to meet with your team. So don't get caught with your britches down and try to get here and you have not met with your team. Now, worst case scenario, I see Sam smiling. Sam, you don't have time, things don't work out. You can you can ask your team, can we Zoom? If they're willing to do that, you can Zoom. But I would think that, this meeting this week, because you're looking at data and things, it would be so much more effective if you're meeting them face to face. That makes a difference. Sometimes Zooming is okay, but this is one where you really need to meet with your team. Any questions from Dr. Revis and me about what you've got to do this week to get task 2 together? Are you beginning to see how, with task 1 and task 2, how they're starting to align and how it builds? By next week, you're going to really see it. Some of you, the light bulb, I'm going to see that light bulb over your head next week whenever we look, because the light bulb's going to come on.
May I say a few things, Dr. Stedman?
Yeah, absolutely.
I had several of you at the end of your task 1, where you were talking about your PLC meeting. You talked about, we're going to do a data dive, and some of you talked about what data sets you were going to use. I didn't really mark you down or tell you to take it out. But if you've already decided and had that conversation with your PLC, then to save your PLC time, you need to prepare some graphics for your team so they can have that data in a format that they can analyze it very quickly. That will save you some time.
And Dr. Revis, I'm glad you pointed that out. Whenever you are meeting with your PLC, you should always, as the leader, go in there prepared with some good information to start with. You want their input, but you should always have something good, have thought about some things, and have something prepared that you can get things started, and and not have to just waste a lot of time anyway. So that's great. Thank you, Dr. Revis. So, Dr. Revis, let's move on.
We've got a couple questions, Dr.
Okay,
Stedman.
go
Do you
ahead.
want to take those? You want to take
Okay.
those now or wait?
Okay, Rico.
Okay, how y'all doing? I'm just a little confused. So
Okay.
during the meeting we have this week, we're supposed to first think about where we're going to look for the data, and then from there decide. No.
No, you don't think about it. You've got to determine where the data is going to, where you're going to pull it from. You've got to lay it all out this week. You're going to think about it and do it at the same time.
Okay.
Does that
Now,
go?
Rico, if I wanted to save time, because that's a lot to do, it's a
Right.
lot to do to identify and then pull it. Again, I would come into that PLC meeting with my most recent test scores
Right.
already up there, so that here's our data. What do we want to look at? Okay.
And that's
You want
what
to examine all data sets, but
yeah,
I would have it prepared.
and that's what we were talking about, Rico. You bring stuff in there already ready for them, and then they can add stuff that maybe you haven't thought about. In addition to the things that you bring, go to your principal, go to your the literacy coach or somebody that can just say, this is what I've got to do. What have you got? What can you tell me to take into this meeting? And bring them to the meeting with you. if they can. But let somebody help you get that stuff that stores that stuff and has it. Okay. Does that help, Rico?
I'm still a little lost, but I figure it out. I figure it out.
Okay.
I probably just gotta just take a look at the examples, and then it probably start to come to me.
Okay.
Once I actually look at the examples, I'm more visual, so it might help if I look at it.
Okay.
Examples, Rico, and if you need any extra support, just reach out to me, okay?
Okay.
Savannah.
Hey, I'm looking at the helpful hints document, looking at prompt 2 at all the different graphics and things. And it looks like there are no like inside or in text citations or narrative citations or anything like that there. Is that correct? We just put the references at the end? Because I see like a screenshot from the school report card on figure 4. And
You're right. That is correct, right, Dr. Revis?
You should be citing where it comes from,
Right.
but I'm not going to be a stickler on that because we all know where it comes from.
Okay, so as long as it's in the references at the end, that's what really matters. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So, Dr. Revis, if we can move on to just a reminder of the competency folio and anything about taskstream that we need to remind them of and their clinical internship.
Okay, I just want to say that you should have already gotten an email from Watermark. If you haven't, go in and look at your junk mail and your spam, because you only have 5 days to set up your account. So be sure, if you've not already set your account up, be sure you do that. It is time sensitive. If you miss the timeline, you have to email the institution to get another one sent. I guess you have to email Dr. Stone.
Well, don't let that be a problem. Just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, but you need to go ahead and do that. It comes from Watermark. Any questions on that? I'm not going to go into anything.
Stuart had a question.
Yes, Stuart.
Yes, I went today after talking with Stephen Moore. I logged into my task stream and it asked me for a student enrollment code, and he said to ask you folks about that. And I wondered if, because when I go to log in, it just says, okay, we need a student enrollment code. So I didn't know where I would get that from.
That should be in your email.
I did not. I'll go back and double check. Is there anybody that has that perhaps? Yeah. Is it specific to me, I suppose?
It's specific to you. Yes. So you should have gotten an email. That's what I'm saying. Look in your spam and junk mail. And it doesn't say task stream. It comes from Watermark. Right. And all you can do is activate your account. It's not populated yet. And I'm going to wait until it gets populated before we even talk about it. So you're just activating the account. Okay.
And Dr. Revis, I think I'm going to ask them to just send a message to Dr. Revis and me. If you're in her class, send it to her. If you're in my class, send it to me. Once it's activated, once you've done it, just say task stream done or something like that, so that we'll know and we can do a little check off, on our end, if you'll do that for us once you've done it. Okay. Just send us a little message on that. Any questions? Last week we talked about, before I went into the dark zone, we were talking about your internship responsibilities. Is everybody good on that? Do you know how to get started with that? Because Dr. Revis did finish with that. Is everybody good with at this point? We'll revisit that, but I don't want to spend a lot of time tonight on something that we don't need to spend a lot of time on tonight with. Do you know what you've got to do, and you understand the 3 areas that you've got to work with and the number of hours that you need? The majority of your hours should be in what?
I don't know.
Anybody?
Leadership.
The majority should be in leadership. So go back and make sure that your leadership, your technical, and your supervision are, they're balanced like they're supposed to be. And don't let that catch up on you. You need to make sure that you're looking for those opportunities every week. And Dr. Revis, we are not going to look at anything with their competency folio yet, because they've got to get this responsibility done first. So we possibly will look at that next week or the week after that. Okay, we've got some time on that one. Okay.
Just set up your taskstream account. That's all you need to worry about.
And the last thing that we're going to do is I want to, and again, this is just so that you know what you've got to do this week. Finish task 1. You've got to do task 2 for peer and instructor review. And I want to go into, and then next week we will introduce to you on Tuesday task 3, because you will be finishing up with task 2, and then you'll have to go into task 3. Now task 3 is going to be is a big responsibility. But once you've identified your most pressing need, you're going to do another research. You're going to create, once you've completed task 1 and 2 successfully, and successfully presented to the leadership, the principal and leadership team, you can move forward with task 3. And you've got to present to your principal, because you've got to say, this is the most pressing need, and you've got to have permission to be able to move forward with that identified most pressing need. Now, what if your principal says, Nicole, that I don't want you to do that? Guess who you're going to listen to? You're going to listen to your principal. And your principal, you've got to do what your principal, even though you've identified, and you just say that in your narrative work, the team and I discovered that the most pressing need was. However, the principal decided that this is what he or she wanted our focus to be on with the PLC. And you move on with that. And that's where your research and your work will be. You just put a disclaimer in there that you've done that. You see, again, you're going to do what you know what the need is now, or you know what your most pressing need is. So your research is going to be built around that most pressing need. You're going to do 2 things. You're going to do a mini research, and you're going to do what we call an annotated bibliography. And we'll talk about those specifically next week. Again, your research will be a minimum of 3 references, best practices centered around your most pressing need. This is an example of what the annotated bibliography looks like. It will be 5 regular resources and 3 online resources. And you'll see that. So for a total of 8 resources there, and a minimum of 3 references for the research. You see this is talking about the 3 online digital tools. And then once you identify those, then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to put some things in graphic form. You're going to show what you've taught about the other, and then this again shows your figures, your online resources. I want you to look. This is a comparison of the resources. These are your 3 online, and it shows the 3, and it helps better understand. We'll talk about that next week. Why you choose what you choose from the online resources to move forward with. But that's an idea of the direction we're going in. You meet with your team this week. You identify the most pressing need. Next week, we start looking for solutions, to the problem. What does the research say? Best practices. What do you have? What are you already doing that maybe is not working? You're at a stalemate with it. And then I'll go ahead and task 4. You're going to put a plan of action in place because you got to try to cure the problem, attack the problem. And that's what task 4 is going to be. And you see how it all builds so that you can try to meet the need of attacking the most pressing need that you've identified, that you'll identify this week.
So
Okay.
there's a lot of writing in task 3. Just know that, a lot of writing.
Now, if you get task 2 done, because once you get moving on it, I think some of you, you're going to move fast. If you get done with task 2 and we can clear you, that doesn't mean that you have to wait until next week. You can do what you can on your own to begin moving forward with task 3. And that's what I would advise you to do. So,
and guys, we force you to do research because, you know, identifying the most pressing needs, 7th grade math. You know, okay. So what do we start doing? We start looking around and we start going and looking at somebody's school down the road and seeing if what their math scores is. And then we'll send a team down there to look at that, what they're doing. No, we're not doing any of that. We go to the research. We go to the research. You do a lit review on root causes, and then you do annotated bibliography on solutions. And we'll talk more about that, but we are going to be research based. And that's the key as an administrator. Yeah, people can bring you ideas of programs they've heard about, but you need to always do research.
okay. Okay, guys, that's it for us. We're going to let you sign out if you need to sign out. Other than that, if there's anybody else that has another question or two, you know, we'll hang on, you know, to address those questions. You can stay on as long as you want to. I can already see, Dr. Revis, where it's coming together. I can see it in their thinking, you know, and it is. I told you, thank you for hanging with us, for being the faithful ones that are hanging with us. Next week will be that it'll be that pivotal point where I think you're going to see where the connections will be completely made. Okay.
Can I ask one question of my students? Are you able to go and see your feedback that I'm giving you, Danielle?
Yes, ma'am.
And John said
Okay.
yes too.
Okay, good.
Okay.
This is the first time I've graded in the new Ultra Blackboard, so I just wanted to make sure you could see my feedback. Okay, 3 of you have raised hands. Casey?
And Miss Carter, tell me how to pronounce your first name.
It's Salita.
Salita, I thought so. Salita, what's your question?
So I had 2 separate questions, and I think you answered one, but I wanted to double check. So the taskstream account, I had the same issue as Stuart did, where it's asking for a code, and I checked the email. There's no code in the email. It just gave your username.
Dr. Revis, all we have is the information that Dr. Stone sent us, because we can't see, we don't get that information.
Somebody's still on who has created
has anybody been able to
Okay, Julia, what did you have to do?
She got in.
So I have experience with that right now because I have a student teacher, so I've had to do that already with her. But when I clicked on the link that they sent me in the email, there's 2 links. One says link to activate and one says link to log in. Make sure you click the link to activate, because it's going to then ask you like to agree to a statement, and then you're going to have to type in your password information, like a helpful hint, and things like that. I didn't get any prompt to type in any kind of code.
Okay, I'll just try it again.
So hit the link to activate. That's what you said?
Yes, correct.
Julia, okay, link to activate.
Thank you, Julia.
How long does it take, Julia, to do?
Like 2 seconds. It's not long at all.
Listen, while we're here, go ahead and find it and see if you can find it, everybody, and go ahead and do it while we're here.
And then my second question was when we were talking about pulling the report card data. So yes, we have the testing data, but as far as the actual like report card data, we don't have the new report card.
Use
yet.
your most
So we
recent
can use
data.
last year.
Yeah, use your most recent data. Yeah.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Kayla?
I have two really quick questions. One is APA question because I've never had to do APA before, so I'm very new at it. If I do not have a page number for a direct quote because it comes from a website, what do I do? I can't hear you, Dr. Evis.
I'm sorry, I'm muted.
Okay.
Well, you will use a paragraph number on the,
Okay.
as it shows up on your website. But again, you got to start looking in that APA manual. It's right there.
Okay. And then the second one is, do we cite like everything that we use, like Our School, iReady, everything that we're pulling like data from?
You certainly can. Yes, you can.
Okay.
Or in lieu of that, I'm okay with this if Dr. Stedman is, in the title of your figure, just put iReady second grade assessments or whatever. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I know in one of my peer reviews, it's like, they're like, well, maybe like cite where you got this from. And in one of them, I'm like, well, I got it from a Canva presentation that my principal made. So can't do that. Okay. So I will make sure to put that in the titles.
Casey, do you still have a question?
Yes,
You're
ma'am.
muted.
Sorry, I accidentally hit react instead of unmute. So I have two questions also. When we turn in task 2, do we still need to have like the formal title at the beginning, or is that just for task 1? Like the task blah 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 APA or APSL Casey
Just
Dover
put
Gardner Webb.
you can start it with task 2.
Okay.
Just task 2. Dr. Stedman, I inadvertently, by mistake, muted you. I was trying to mute myself and I muted you. So if you could unmute, I don't think I can do it.
That's
Thank
okay.
you.
I got it. Okay. I was Dr. Garris. You said you still can't find your link to activate.
So I thought I'm able to activate. No, I'm able to create my login information. And so I'm not able to activate. I thought that there was 2 links in the email. When I clicked on the second link, it brought me back to enter a code.
Okay.
Anybody help her? Because again, we've never seen that. So can anybody help her?
Julia.
Be 2 different emails, or would it be, so the first email that I received had my username, and so I clicked on the first link, and then I went in and I put my credentials in, and then after that I went back to that same email because I do not have another email, and the second link, and it's bringing me back and it's telling me to discontinue my session and relog in. And when I did that, it brought me back to enter a code.
Julia,
So I think I know what she's talking about.
Julia, do this. Share your screen and pull up and show the class what you're doing.
Oh gosh. Okay, I will try. Let's see. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, is this what you guys are talking about down here?
Yes.
So I think from my understanding, I didn't do anything with that. But if you click my account, I believe you've already registered. Like, I don't think you need to hit a code or enter anything. You should be able to see your name, student ID, and email. That should mean you are registered. There's nothing on here for us yet, from my understanding, to enter anything yet. You're
Okay.
just creating the account. Now, if I'm wrong, you guys can, Dr. Sedman, let me know. But when I click my account, I'm able to see all of the information that's related to me.
Well,
That's
Dr.
right.
Evans, that means to me that she's in there.
Yeah, she's created her account, and that's all you can do right now.
Okay.
It's not been populated, so you should be good, Dr. Garris.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you, Julia.
Okay. Dr. Garris, I'm like you. I overthink some of this stuff sometimes. So that's what we do. But is everybody good?
Well, I'm not. This is McCoy Wilson, Keisha McCoy Wilson. I've
Uh-huh.
gotten a login error doing everything that is asked me to do. So I'm going to keep playing with it and see what happens.
Okay.
And I'll let you know whether or not I was
and
successful or
Keisha,
not.
it's okay.
Yes.
Some of you have not finished putting your information in, introducing yourself. This is why it's important to have that information in there, because you should be able to reach out to each other. It's okay to say, for Keisha to reach out and say, Julia, do you have 5 minutes that you can Zoom with me and help me with so-and-so at some point today? It's okay to do that. Help each other out as much as you can, with things like this. There's not a problem at all in asking.
Well, I have to say this, Stuart, you are awesome. Stuart and I, we've been communicating, so thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Stuart.
Chelsea, do you have a question?
I do have one. So I was looking at the helpful hints on task 2, prompt 2. After it says we have to meet with our principal and we have a PowerPoint, and then we can do a video or a picture. Are we doing that this week, or is that like after we final this part?
You're going to have to do it before you can move on to task 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you can get it in this week, if you meet and it doesn't need to be a long presentation, Chelsea.
Okay.
If you can get it in this week, that's just one more thing that you've got off your plate, because you would probably have to hit the road running on Monday with it next week. So, but yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And remember, if your principal is part of that PLC, they've been in that data analysis. You'll still have to do a presentation to the team or whatever, and you want to make some slides, to show how you got to your pressing need. But you can take those charts and graphs and figures that you've done in prompt 2 and just put them on a PowerPoint slide.
And I said this was it, guys. I apologize, but I want to show you one more thing. This is in your resources as well, under the AAPSL documents. But to get accomplished, now this is Gardner Webb guidelines, DPI guidelines. This is what you've got to do, and you need to always look at that. Anything past proficient means that we can't send you on. Proficient means that you've done what you need to do, and that could be anywhere from, I would say a B- up to a B+, that if you were looking at a grade. So you don't really want to camp out here. You should always strive for accomplished. And that means that pretty much you're okay if you can get here. But then this is for AAPSL Task 1 that you've got to clear this week. This is what you've got to do. The research, and it tells you right there what you've got to do. And notice the and. This is what you've got to do. And this is what you've got to do. And this is what you've got to do. All of this must be seen, clearly seen, for you to be considered accomplished on task 1. And then as you're moving into task 2 this week, go ahead and think about this. This is what you've got to do to clear it and be accomplished. It's everything that we've talked about. You will describe data collection strategies and criteria in the process of identifying the most pressing academic need, and you're going to data is graphically represented in the narrative in the form of charts, tables, graphs, etc., to be used to illustrate and support the data analysis and conclusions. And the candidate will provide evidence that she or he can effectively lead a collaborative PLC meeting where data is analyzed and discussed, concluding with the identification of a specific need or needs, and the evidence demonstrates academic needs assessment and strong PLC leadership that exceeds, notice that word there, exceeds a proficiency rating. So what are you going to do to make sure that you have exceeded? You've got to go the extra mile. You've got to do the extra thing. You've got to put the icing on the cake. You got to decorate it well. Okay? So this always will help you guide what you need to be doing.
That's the rubric
Right.
again that the
Yeah.
state evaluators use when they look at your work.
Right. Does everybody feel good? I know you're overwhelmed a little bit, but do you feel a little more comfortable or much more comfortable, moving into the work this week? Everybody good? If you are, give me a big smile. I need some smiles. Okay. Thank you, Shaquana. I saw that smile. Danielle always smiles.
Casey, did
Okay.
you have a question we haven't addressed? You're muted. I can't hear you.
Okay, I have one just teeny quick question. Because I'm in South Carolina, our report card data hasn't come out like you were saying. Is it okay if I take like the tables of information and make it into a graph to show and
Sure.
put it in my
Yeah.
paper? Okay, I
That's
just wanted to
perfect.
make sure I could create it myself and it didn't
Oh,
have to come
yes.
from somewhere.
Yes, you can create it yourself. And, in fact, the North Carolina report cards are not out yet. They're going to have to take their raw data and create the tables. So,
Okay, cool. Just making sure.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
Thank you so
good
much.
question.
Okay, Priscilla?
Hey, quick question. So if I'm in elementary and I'm doing a first grade PLC and their focus right now is Dibbles data, is that okay to use Dibbles data?
That is one source of data. What other sources do you have?
Well,
You
for
know,
CMS, they're implementing iReady.
that's
So
good.
because they've taken away MAP, but that doesn't start to October, the first week of October. So right now we have Dibbles data.
Okay, but now Priscilla, think about this.
Mm-hmm.
You're pulling, when you look at data, maps may not be used this year, but it's still data that they have used. So it's still
Yes.
okay to go back and look at the data from that. Okay.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, guys. We will see you next week. And Dr. Revis, next week. Okay, Rico, you got a question?
Yes, I just want to make sure, for Dr. Revis, on your notes that you had given me, you had said, you told me the correction I need to make, and then you said submit it one more time. So do I submit it in the same spot?
Yes, same Dropbox.
Okay.
Now, Rico, I think I'm going to have to create another attempt for you, or I may have deleted an attempt. Okay. If you have trouble submitting it back in that same Dropbox, shoot me an email. Okay.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Okay. Dr. Revis, Tutiana?
Tatiana, did you have a question?
Yes, it's for you, Dr. Revis, if you don't mind staying on.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Julia, did you have another question?
Yeah, so I think I might have submitted in the wrong place. So I resubmitted my task 1, but I resubmitted it to the one that said task 1 final. So I did that wrong.
Yeah.
You did, but that's okay.
Okay.
Yours was. Let me look at it, and
Okay.
I'll send you a message if you need to do anything differently for me. Okay.
Okay, you can just email me if I need to do it again or whatever I need to do. I'm
Hey,
sorry.
I can always take it out and let you put it back in if I need to.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, guys. We will see you next Tuesday.
Okay, Dr. Stedman, keep us on because
I
Tatiana
will. I will.
wants to.
I'm going to stop the recording, but just remind me to